Welcome back. For this flat iron tuning tech tip, we wanted to take a detailed look at putting on Brembo calipers to a GD WRX, an 02 to 07 WRX. So that's something that we get a lot of questions about. But before we do, what we wanted to touch on first is used calipers. So at this point, used Brembos are pretty readily available, and there's a reasonable chance that if you're watching this thinking about doing the conversion, you're looking at picking up a set of used rears, maybe even front and rear Brembo calipers from an STI and bolting them on your WRX. If that's the case, there's a couple things that you want to be aware of. The first is, the Brembo calipers are aluminum, but the bolts that attach them to the knuckle are steel. And coupled with the fact that a couple of years of the service manuals, there was a misprint for the torque spec for that bolt. And it is very, very common to see damaged or destroyed threads in Brembo calipers where they attach to the knuckle. So if you're looking at a used caliper, the very first thing you want to do, and unfortunately this front caliper here is a perfect example of it, is inspect the threads where the caliper attaches to the knuckle and make sure that they are not damaged. By the same token, you want to inspect the bleed screws. Again, it's an aluminum caliper, but you have a steel bleed screw. It's very easy to over torque those bleed screws to damage or destroy the threads there as well. So if you can, ideally before you take delivery of these, if you can inspect those things and make sure that you've got a caliper that's in good shape, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And if your caliper is damaged, those are two critical things you want to address before you even think of going to install them on your car. The third point that I would make is also look at the dust boots in the caliper as well. If the car that they came off of saw a lot of track use, then they could be partially melted, partially missing, damaged, etc. And if that's the case, then you want to at least replace the dust boots, or maybe even just rebuild the whole caliper before you go and install it on the car. If that is a concern to you and you don't want to kind of risk getting in a bad set of calipers, Brembo does make their Gran Turismo kits for the GD WRX front and rear that basically come with new calipers, new rotors, pads, lines, everything you would need for the install. So they're a little more expensive than used, of course, but everything is brand new and it's a total comprehensive kit. But if you are looking for a used set and you're trying to piece everything together, of course you need the caliper. On the GD WRXs, it has to be the gold rear calipers. The black calipers from the 8 to 14 STI will not fit. It's a totally different spacing there. So it has to be the goldies, and the first thing you need is a caliper adapter. This is the K&S adapter. Brembo makes them, of course. Cartboy, there's a number of companies that have them. Make sure you get the hardware with them. That's another critical point. The threads in the Brembo calipers are different than the Subaru calipers, like the OEM ones or the 4-pots and 2-pots. If you try and reuse your hardware with Brembos, that's a very quick way to damage or cross-thread your calipers as well. So make sure you get the adapters with the correct Brembo hardware. Would not be a bad idea to just lightly thread those bolts into the calipers by hand and make sure you got the right ones before you start the install. And then the other common thing that was needed was a conversion rotor. So Brembo makes those. These are DBA conversion rotors. What this does is it basically takes out for the fact or accounts for the fact that the R160 parking brake shoes are smaller than the STI. So this has a smaller parking brake drum, so that you can just slide this over your R160 parking brake, and it's the 316 millimeters for the STI caliper. And that's been pretty much the option for a long time now. There's two drawbacks to that solution. The first is, whenever you have to go and replace the rotors, you have one choice only, which is to find another conversion rotor. This is a custom rotor. This is not something off a different car. So they are available. Again, DBA makes them. We stock them, but most places do not. And so you basically have that one choice. And then the other downside is weight. So what they did is they basically just added a lot of extra material, or kept a lot of material for that smaller parking brake drum, and that added a lot of weight to the rotor. On our scales, this rotor basically came in 4 pounds heavier than a standard STI rotor. And if you're trying to go to the track, if you're trying to save weight in the car, if you're trying to spend good money on lightweight wheels, for instance, you're bolting 4 extra pounds on each side, just because of the rotor. So that can undo a lot of your work to save weight there. So we were looking for a better solution, and again we reached out to K&S, and they had us covered again with their adapter parking brake shoe. So again, this is for the GD WRX, the 02 to 07, and as you can see, there's just a ton of friction material there. And what that does is that takes up the extra space. So now, instead of a conversion rotor, you can use any 04 STI rotor and do the conversion. So the advantage is, obviously weight, but then also rotor options. Any 04 STI rotor, two-piece, what have you, is now viable with these adapter shoes. Now the thing I will say is, replacing these parking brake shoes, it's not impossible, but it's definitely involved. It's a lot more involved than just sliding over an adapter rotor, so keep that in mind. And there's a clip and a spring on either side that attaches these, and you definitely want to have those basically ready before you start the install. They're not that common, and it can be done to reuse the old hardware, but it can be tricky. So if you've got those little clips and springs available, that's going to make your life easier when you're doing the install. The other thing that K&S noted with these is, because they're so much thicker, this is an emergency brake. It's going to work fine as an emergency brake, but that's it. If you're doing anything with the car where you're pulling on the parking brake to get the car to rotate, this is not going to tolerate that as well as a stock style parking brake shoe. So if you are using the parking brake, more than to just keep the car stationary, probably going with a conversion rotor or some other solution is going to be a better fit for you. So that's about it. There's not a lot to it, but there's kind of a lot of ins and outs. I will say too that because this is basically the same adapter, but again with different hardware, that you would need to put the Subaru 2-pots on the back. If you have an 06 or a 07 WRX, you don't need this. Your backing plate should work to just attach the caliper, but you still have the same parking brake. So you need either the adapter rotor or the adapter shoes. So yeah, so hopefully that clears up a lot of the questions and helps you out with your swap. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your support. We really do appreciate it. And if this video was helpful, please do drop a like and stay tuned for more flat irons tuning and tech tips.